Hi, I'm sure that preparation is on full swing for the next big exam coming up, which is the XAT to be held on 6th of January 2019. In the next few minutes, I'll try to take you through some of my inputs with respect to the test taking strategy for XAT and the associated cutoffs for various B schools which accept XAT scores. If we quickly go through the last year's XAT structure, there were a total of 74 questions, 26 English, 21 decision making, and 27 maths and DI. Now this year they haven't specifically mentioned anything about the number of questions, but going by the past trends, the number of questions have always hovered around 72 to 80. So my take would be that the number of questions will be in the vicinity of 75 or so. The big change this year that essay has been taken off XAT. So I'm sure this is a welcome relief for most of us that we will not have to write that 300 word to 400 word essay which usually students wrote in XAT till the last year. There is though GK with 25 questions. Last year GK had a separate time limit, but this year they haven't specifically mentioned anything. So you get 3 hours to attempt the core 75 odd questions plus another 25 for GK. Though the GK last year there was no negative marking, so we assume that something similar will carry on this year. There are 5 options in XAT, unlike CLAT where there were 4 options, so one has to be slightly careful here. There is negative marking of 0.25 for every wrong answer, and one of the unique things of XAT, you also lose 0.05 for every unattempted question after 8 unattempted questions. Though this is more or less, it doesn't really make a lot of sense for us to read too much into it, because 0.05 is a very, very small penalty. So I would rather ignore this aspect completely and would always tread with caution and only answer those questions which I'm sure of. So unfamiliar questions, unfamiliar territory to be avoided. Don't mark answers on the pretext that you will lose 0.05 for an unattempted question. Remember, 0.25 is 5 times more than 0.05. So one has to be very, very careful here. Please ignore this aspect of negative marking for unattempted questions. Another critical aspect for XAT this year is that they have moved on to TCS. So the interface which you will find in the online XAT paper will be very similar to what you have been seeing in CLAT. So if you look at our mocks too, our XAT online mocks are very, very similar to the way we have conducted our online CLAT mocks. So that way, all the right panel, the scrolling options, everything remains the same. So there will be nothing new in terms of the user friendliness or the computer interface with respect to XAT. These are the percentile versus score mapping of last year, though this could change depending on the level of difficulty. Last year XAT was a slightly more difficult paper compared to XAT 70, so the cutoffs went down a bit. You can also concentrate here where you find we have mentioned various cutoffs for the different B schools accepting XAT scores. More or less they are similar to CLAT. So I am sure that most of them will also be available to apply after the results. But in case CLAT hasn't gone too well, then XAT becomes all the more critical because many of the top colleges in these 80s and mid 80s are available through XAT as well. This is very specifically to XLRI, both the BM and the HR programs. If you look at the cutoff last year, it hovered around the mark of 30, overall cutoff for the BM program for XLRI, which was close to 94 percentile. So if this would be critical for you, 94 percentile for the BM program and 92 percentile for the HR program. The sectional cutoffs, you could see that for the HR program, the significantly lower maths cutoffs, as well as decision-making cutoffs are lower with respect to the HR programs. English though remains the same both for the BM and the HR. So there are sectional cutoffs for both the programs. One interesting aspect here would be that the sectional cutoffs are marginally lower here for female candidates, both for the BM and the HR programs. Needless to say, 100% placements, top college, 20 lakhs plus average salary last year. So I'm sure all of us are gunning for it, but please ensure that sectional cutoffs are duly met. So any score in excess of 30, close to 33, 34 would be a brilliant score in XAT going by the past trends. Now this would be again a slide of perhaps which would interest you the most in terms of what strategy should you take, which section should you attempt first, how much time do you need to devote in each of these sections. I have stuck to the old formulae of English DM and QA-DI, which typically is similar to what we have been doing in CAT. So since most of us are familiar with that kind of a attempt order, I think I have gone with that. You could tinker around given your strengths and weaknesses, but do remember that English cannot be attempted in the end, because in English a lot of inferential questions, a lot of critical reasoning goes into XAT English. So please do not make the mistake of putting English beyond the second section. Maths and DI I have kept it to the end because something which is much of concept based, not much to really think much. So I think it's better to spend the last 1 hour or 70 minutes in maths towards the end, perhaps being able to maximize that section. GK is one section which there are two schools of thought. One says start with GK, be done away with it in the first 10 minutes and then move on to the other 3 core areas. But I would say put GK in the end, because GK anyways is not very critical for the first call. If at all it is critical, it is only for XLRI. So I think it's best to keep GK in the end. Even 10 minutes I think is an extra time for GK. Perhaps 6 to 7 minutes would be good enough for you to be able to go through those 25 questions and mark whatever you think. No negative marking typically in GK, so I'm sure all of you are attempting everything which comes your way, but don't spend time. Don't think. Just mark the answers if you know. If you don't know, you could just randomly guess. But be careful to read the instructions. Please ensure that you only do random guessing in GK if there is no negative marking. I've also kept a buffer of 5 to 10 minutes for each section depending on your strengths and weaknesses. Please follow that. Don't lower the time limit below this for any section. Otherwise, sectional cutoffs will be difficult to meet. At the same time, don't spend in excess of this time as far as your strongest section is concerned, because sectional cutoffs are reasonably stringent with both XLRI and XIMB. Overall, try to attempt roughly 50 questions excluding GK. Accuracy percent is critical, 85%. XAT is typically an exam where time is not an issue. You have ample time, lesser number of questions, so you can really sleep through the paper. You will rarely have a student come out after XAT and said, I could not attempt because there was lack of time. So please take your time to attempt questions. Do not rush, and you will have ample time in the end. In all the 3 sections, the time limit which I have mentioned here is ample time to attempt the required number of questions. So here, unlike SNAP and NMAT, where we have to really rush through the paper, this is more like CAT, even slower pace than CAT. So please take your time while attempting your questions. Let's quickly move on to each section. English, it's half RC, half VA typically. RC is a little more difficult in that. So I would rather say go for all the VA questions first. Critical reasoning, para jumbles, vocab, grammar based. The more easier bet is the VA part. So I would suggest attempt all the VA first in the first 20-25 minutes and then go for the RC questions. Decision making, again a very common sense based section. Most of you would have attempted my classes in the center where we had discussed at length how to go for it. Please remember, elimination of options is the best strategy to go in this section. I would rather go for the non-quantitative decision making questions. There are only 3 to 4 questions which are data driven. I would rather not go for them in the first attempt. First, try to complete all the non-quantitative portions. Couple of things: be very fair when you're answering. Think of equity rules. You have to be fair to everybody and never choose unethical choices. Okay. So overall, decision making is a scoring section, but do not start with the data-based questions. That's the most critical part. Maths and DI, the linchpin lies here. You have a lot of questions to look at. The 2 DI caselets are critical. I'm sure you've been seeing in the mocks as well. A lot of games and tournament-based questions have come in the past. Try to attempt them first. I would say DI is a safe bet in XAT. And contrary to popular belief, the QA of XAT, if you look at the last couple of years, has been similar on the lines of CAT. So you don't get too many questions on higher maths here. Okay, spread equally across all the areas. So it will be more or less a home ground for you. Whoever have prepared well for CAT, something on the similar lines. Data sufficiency will be there, unlike which nowadays we don't get in CAT, so you can practice a few of those. Do not waste time on difficult or unfamiliar questions. Well, Static GK is the most popular question bank as far as that is concerned. You don't get too much of current affairs here. The various topics on which questions do appear have been mentioned here. I'm sure you're going through the XAT GK compendium and all our online resources as far as the GK is concerned. What to do? Some of you have already taken many of our mocks. Total, you can take 8 mocks. The first 4 you take. The next 4 also get unlocked for you. But this is only for our classroom students. The test series students, however, only get 4 mocks. There are certain XAT-specific section tests, which I'm sure many of you would have already attempted. If not, ensure you attempt each one of them. Old XAT papers, typically 2008 to 8 onwards can be looked at. 2011 was an exception. You can avoid that year. Especially the decision-making questions of old XAT papers are very, very critical. Please ensure you attempt them. All QA concepts might be SNAP was there around 10 days back, so quickly revise them once. GK from the online account, compendium, the Manthan. I'm sure all of you are going through that. Do ensure you watch the online non-CAT videos which are available in your aspiration account under video section CAT day classes. So there are certain videos on decision making, on English of GK, on XAT strategy. Please ensure you go through them. We have had a couple of non-CAT classes at our center. Especially the English and the DM sheets should definitely be looked at. So this is the part I was talking of in the aspiration account, your online account. This is the XAT compendium. Please ensure you go through that. Because that is a little different from SNAP, because SNAP is more of current affairs, that is more of static. So don't only bank on your SNAP preparation for XAT GK. Having said that, you know XAT GK is not that critical as SNAP, but still, you never know. If you have an XLRI call, that GK will come to play. These are some of the non-CAT videos, just snapshot of that. Have a look at that. Don't forget, last but not the least, do post a comment to the video if you like it. I hope this would be of help. And once again, I wish each one of you the very best for the coming XAT. I'm sure all of you will come up with flying colors. Thank you.